am I focusing time and energy that is not actually serving me anymore? I'm just holding on to it too tight. Have that question. Is there anything that I'm the only person that can do this? And if there is, deep dive into that internally and kind of figure out, is that true? And if it's not true, start to figure out ways to kind of break that open and explore opportunities where other people can partner with you. And like I said, row in the same direction, because that is truly the bread and butter of where we see scale with brands just popping up. You have to be able to have great people and great partners.
Hello. Welcome, everyone. Today's edition of Trellis LinkedIn Live. Today's going to be a really fun one. We got Corey here from buffaBRAND down in Buffalo, New York. Corey, how are you? So pleased to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I've actually had the pleasure of seeing you multiple times and we're only in March. And that's actually been like one of my highlights of the year so far.
What a year. Yeah, this is the first time that's been true in a while. You usually go a long time in between. So this has been a pleasure.
Yeah. Corey, we ran into each other again at DX3 last week, I believe it was. And that was a good Canadian conference, bringing in brands, bringing in retailers and everyone in between here. But the Canadian e-commerce landscape is growing more than it ever is before. But at the same time, e-commerce as a whole, the brands on Amazon, everyone in between, I think that when we were chatting there, and the precipice of a lot of this conversation, what we're talking about today, came from some of the conversations we had there, and really understanding and what ended up coming out of that conversation between you and I was brands. Like there's this concept of a brand ego, right? And the moment that a brand realizes that and figures out when they are in that scenario, that's like the unlock for them, right? Like being cognizant of it, realizing it. And really kind of shedding the brand ego was a big part of what we realized. That's a big thing that's holding brands back. I know when you and I were chatting, we actually chatted for like an hour on this. We're like, we need to actually go public on this and bring this to everyone else to really help unlock their own brands, because that's something that we're seeing across the board. Talk to me about your experience, Corey, with the brand ego there.
Yeah, that's the lovely part about this. I think this started as just a casual conversation, kind of sitting off to the side and just having a conversation. And then what we realized is that coffee chat should lead to something a little bit bigger, a little more, a little less abstract, and kind of dive into it and share some of the things that we started to uncover just through a casual conversation. So yeah, so the brand ego on my side of things, and kind of the way that I look at it is, every brand understands, or brand owner has to have a bit of an ego, right? You need to know who you are. You need to know who you are, what you do, what your intentions are in the landscape of e-commerce as a whole. But there can also be, just like any ego, if you go too far, hold too tight to that ego, to that persona, to that knowledge, you can have some things that start to work against you. And I think that's where the genesis of this kind of started for us. And what we see in the landscape of e-commerce is that brand ego, more often than not, gets a little tied to people, and they need to maybe identify that and identify the areas of it, and learn when to let go, I should say. Not that they have to let go, but learn when to let go. So yeah, I think that's kind of what I started.
You and I we've talked about this alone, like from either it be my own entrepreneurial endeavors or even yours for that matter as well. But there's like this brand ego, and that concept is really like it's the personal vision. It's the attachment to that personal vision. It's attachment to like that, what I know what's best for the brand. I know what the brand is, everything it stands for, the type of products, the quality, and all of that is true, right? It's not that any of those things aren't true. It's actually good to have, right? You have the conviction, the confidence around your brand, but it's the other side of that like it comes at the expense of, right? And it often is what growth in various different areas, things that where people are just often better at it, right? And like you and I met a brand at DX3, and they're doing about 15 million a year, and pretty large market within the Canadian space here on Amazon. But at the same time, like he's the CEO of this company. They're in many retailers across the board. the CEO is still doing his own PPC. He's got a team of 10 people, right? It's not that he doesn't have a large enough team where and it's not like he's spending a small amount of money by any means. But there's like this reluctance of like, I know how I'm going to bid on what keywords, where I'm going to bid him on what targets. And like, he himself is every day going into PPC. And that, like, you and I both kind of looked at each other and be like, why are you? I'm sure there's better ways for you to spend your time.
Yeah,
Right?
and that's always the case, right? Like whether it's kind of brand ego, and I think that somewhat gets tied to leadership ego in some ways, of not being able to let go, delegate, or build a team where you feel confident in the ability for them to execute in a fashion that you'd be happy with. And I think, I'm a CEO, I'm a founder of my own business. I've run into this at myself, and I think, it's not that I haven't. It's certainly something where I've had to have those moments of like, how do I let go of this? When do I let go of it? Who do I let go of it to? And like, am I the best person to be doing this at all times? Probably not at a certain point. And when you start small as a brand, you may have the same thing. You're handling so much of kind of everything, but like an inevitability of scaling and successful branding is you have to have more people rowing in the boat and go in the same direction. And ultimately, if you're not leading that boat, if you're just another one of the people rowing, you're not actually best serving the capacity of what the team needs you to do to scale at a rapid pace.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting part. Like, where does it actually come from, and like, how does it develop? Because we're talking in the way that we're talking about it, and I think you and I both believe this to be true. It's that there are elements of this that allow you to, when you leverage it appropriately, it'll actually allow you to grow more. Right? It's actually a good thing. Right? There's an element of like the I know I'm the only one that knows best for my business. That's the part that's not right. But it's when it's like, I stand for something, I stand for my brand, I stand up for my brand, and I'm going to make sure my brand stands up on its own in the market. That level of confidence that you have behind it, that's always positive. Like, that is still part of the brand ego. It's the other side where it's like, it's the fear part, really, right? It's that I don't want my brand to lose. I don't want it to be tarnished. I don't want it to run in the wrong way. I'm worried about my business, and I think there's like, often that's where like the fear-based decision making kind of comes into play, right? Where it's like, I'm just going to do the PPC, right? In that brand scenario, I'm just going to do it, right? Like, I've done it with someone else before. It didn't go the way that I wanted to go. I've gone down this path. I tried X technology, or I've tried X agency, and I'm the only one who knows how to do it best. And I think that that's where it's like the baby, right? Where your brand is your baby, and like you feel that way, and you probably feel that way with buffaBRAND as well, right? Like, it's your baby, and you're seeing it grow. But I think the biggest thing from that is that at a certain point, your baby has grown up, and when you are in market, your products are already launched, like, it's, what do you do then? Like, you don't homeschool your baby all the time, and some people do it. That's completely cool. But the vast majority, right? Like, you go to a doctor, you go take them, like, I'll reference even my own nephew and what my sister and brother-in-law are doing for him, right? Like, going to a sports camp, going to like like swimming school, like all these things. You bring in all of these experts to support your child, right? That to help them be well-rounded, to help them grow, to help them have the right person, have the right characteristics, or have the right abilities to grow into the future and build the right foundation to scale even faster, to grow even faster, to mature even faster, to excel even faster, right? And so we do that. We always, it's this fallacy of like, my brand's my baby, and we always treat it like that. But we have to remember that it grows up, right? That it is growing up, and what does it need to grow up? And so it's such an interesting concept, and like, I think that you and I have both run up into this. This is what that brand wasn't the first time that we went through.
It's not. Certainly not. And I think for us, the conversation kind of stems around what you said of, if you're finding yourself after the first 6 months of business, depending on where you are in the journey, right? Are you launching a brand? Sure, you need to handhold. There's part of that. Are you kind of scaling to that SMB spot? Are you kind of moving more enterprise? The further you go up, the less you can hold on to. But there certainly is a threshold of revenue and or time that goes by where you have to then, if you ever say the sentence that I'm the only one that can do X right, then that you have to actually ask the question, well, why? Why am I the only person that can do that? Because I can guarantee you there are lots of people in this space that are amazing at every single thing that can do it just as good as you. And kind of letting go of that, I'm the only one. That's where you can really open yourself up to true scaling. So like moving to a kind of more of an example of this would be like, if you're the only one that can, let's go creatives, right? So I think this is a good example of it. If you're the only one that can get the brand feel right on creatives, then you need to have a brand guidelines, right? The question then becomes, why am I the only one that understands the way this feels? Well, because you haven't written it out and figured out how to get that to someone else to hand off. And so the way that we solve that is, well, let's build a brand guideline together where you can touch every component of this along the way and adjust everything and get down a document with all of the creatives you like, the mood board you like, the colors, the Pantones, the voice of your company and of your brand. And if you can because at this point, if you can't define that and hand it to someone else, then you don't actually know what your brand is. And that it's so nebulous that that's the reason. And that's actually going to stop you from scaling. So that's that would be one example in kind of my business where we run into where people say like, well, the brand has to be airy and flowy. It's like, okay, now let's define what that means and actually get down to it.
How does it output?
Yes.
Right. What is the output of airy and flowy? And oftentimes it is subjective, but brand guidelines aren't a new concept, right? Like these things have been around for a while. There's ways to distill it. There's ways to capture it. And that can be true for anything, right? Whether it be how do I run my PPC? What are the rules around my price? How do I run promos, right? Like all the things that you believe to be true, you can impart that, right? And I think what it comes down to is when you recognize that you have that ego, and I think everyone does to some extent or the other. And it's not a bad thing. It's more about understanding that when I do have it and being cognizant of it, who are the people that I'm going to bring in? What are the partnerships that I'm going to enable or to find, whether it be a team member or it be an agency or it be a platform? Like it's how am I going to go about and finding that and treating that so that I can set this up for success, right? And I think that's often where the gap lies, where like it's like, I'm the only one who knows this. I can document these things. I can probably create a lot of these kind of like, what are the things that I want to keep contained here and build that sandbox. But the other side of that is like, well, how do I figure out who to trust? And Corey, how have you been able to? I know like when I've talked to some of the brands that you work with as well, and they love you. They trust you implicitly and explicitly, right? And so how have you built that and bridged that gap for them? How have you solved that for them?
So the way that I always look at it is this, and this is kind of the way that I approach our partners. We kind of move from even using the word client to the word partner, and I think that's a really important thing to call out because when we first started, we really had clients, and I felt the need to take on a lot of their input, and rightly so. They know their brands, and I think I deferred too often. And as we moved into a partnership, I really wanted to identify from the start, this is a 50-50 thing. Like we're working together. We are a part of your team, but you and I define what this looks like together. And so the way that we kind of always frame it right from the start is, hey, your products, your brand, your feel, the development of all of these things better than I can ever know. Going back to what we said, you started this, you're building it, you know it, you live it every single day. As a partner, teach me what I need to know because I know basically everything that you're going to need for the platform side and how to execute on the platforms and marketplaces. And I'll teach you as much as you need to know on the marketplaces so that you can give me the information I need and vice versa. And that will be how we work. And I think there's a mutual respect to that of essentially acknowledging right from the start, like I respect your brand. I respect what you have going on. But I am not personally in this industry. So teach me what I need to know so that I can serve you in a way that's meaningful and that's valuable to exactly what you're trying to get done. And I think that's the genesis of that conversation where people go, okay, well then maybe I'm ready to let go of a few things because he gets what he knows, and what he doesn't know, he's actually asking me about. Like that puts us in a place of mutual respect.
And and it's actually interesting how you're describing it there, because really what you're presenting to them is that, like, look, I don't understand the category, and that's your skills, right? Like those are the things that you own. But I understand how to market. I understand how to create content. I understand how to advertise. And applying those two worlds together, like that's what you understand. And so it's like what's ended up happening in the proxy of this is that you're giving him the confidence, or giving your client the confidence, to say, okay, well, these are the perceived gaps you have. These are the perceived gaps I have. Being vulnerable and creating that connection is like, this actually fits perfectly well as a result of that, right? And so it's like, it's as a brand, I think that for a lot of brands, right, it's really truly understanding what are your actual gaps and skill that you don't possess on that team today, or you don't possess as an individual today, and your maybe even your perceived gaps that you don't have the confidence or conviction on, and starting with that to then be able to have the conversation with you. And when you come in and say, look, this is what you're good at, this is what I'm good at, these things start to come together, right? And approaching it that way, I think that there's an alignment in values, right? That like it's you're communicating your values in that process. And I think that becomes really important. Like, it's even the brands that work with us, the agencies that work with us, the biggest variable that we look for when we, for example, partner or anything like that is and oftentimes what they come back to us with is that we align in our philosophy, and we align in what we're trying to do. Right, where there's an alignment there around the value side of it, also on the expertise and the technology side of it, to support where they're at. And if that isn't there, then it's not going to work no matter what, right? And so I think if that brand wasn't ready to accept that they had that skills gap, that then I don't. Do you think you would have been? It's like, hey, we actually would have been able to create a good partnership.
No, I think that's the first place that partnerships break down. Because it devalues all of the work that you're doing as an agency, or even as the brand. I think having that respect of what's happening in-house, and I think we could kind of go that direction conversation as well, the in-house versus agency versus like, because ultimately your in-house team are also partners, right? They're partners in what you're trying to achieve.
In your vision.
What's that?
In your vision, they're partners in your vision and the brand's vision.
That's exactly it. And so I think that having that and being able to figure that side of things out as well becomes really, really important. And do you need people in house? And I think when you start to lean into the negative side of the brand ego, I do think more people that are struggling with that side, struggling to let go, do feel like, well, if I have more people in house and the proximity to me, they'll get more done. They'll do better things for my brand. They'll help me scale. And I found that to be not true at all, to be totally honest. And that's not because I work at an agency. Before I worked here, I worked in-house at a very large top 1% Amazon seller for multiple years, built a huge team and all that. And I saw the exact same thing happening there. And there were so many times where I was like, hey, we should actually be working with some partners who are really good at these specific things, instead of hiring someone and pretending that they're going to be good just because they're sitting next to, the other team members. And opening that up and kind of letting go of that is an important piece of the overall agenda.
And I think that there's two parts to that, right? Like, there's a part you mentioned there. It's like the proximity, right? Like bringing someone in house and having them close. Like, I don't think, and I think this rings true across in many ways, but proximity doesn't often equal a solution, right? Like those things aren't often true, right? It doesn't equal clarity. It doesn't equal a skill. It doesn't, the ability to just reach out to someone. I think that also comes with having a good partner, but the ability to have someone within your team, like, you have to coach, nurture that person, help them improve. And if you don't even have those skills, how are you going to do that with someone? Right. And so either you're bringing someone in who has all those skills and you're trusting they have the knowledge, right? Or you're going to say, hey, my budget doesn't allow me for this. I'm going to hire, X, Y, and Z 5-year college grad, 5 years out of university, 3 years out of university college grad. They're going to figure it out. They're going to learn it. But are you really doing yourself a service or a disservice in that process? Are you doing the brand a service or a disservice in that process? And so it's like, there's an element of being able to learn from the skills of your partners and the expertise of your partners, and working with them in that way, and communicating that, right? I think that comes down to these are the things that I'm worried about. These are the things that I'm trying to learn. Can we do this in a semblance of like togetherness, let's call it, that allows me to help learn some of these things, understand the process, and build off of your expertise. And I know we don't have an issue with that. I know we actually try to implore that and educate on that front. But also on the other side, I think you do the same, right? That it's like you're trying to figure out what are the things that you need to give you that consistent confidence that we are partnering together. And I know you to ask those questions. Funny enough.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I do think, like, kind of off of that, we should almost jump back to the PPC CEO. I think we should always jump back to it. So
Yeah.
my question to you would be, okay, we've identified from our standpoint, we kind of immediately identified that, like, that's a problem. You might not feel like that's a problem, but let me tell you, it is a problem.
Yeah.
And it might be working for you, but is it working at the top level? So my question to you to kind of transition would be, how, if I'm a brand, how would I identify that and then move on from it? Like, so you're a PPC guy, right? Like, you work in the PPC realm. If I'm a CEO out there and I'm like, I'm that person, or maybe I'm not even doing the PPC, but maybe I'm just like really micromanaging the person in-house that's doing the PPC. So I'm spending too much time doing that. How do you pull yourself out?
Yeah. I think it's a matter of a few parts here. So, right, especially on the PPC side, I think there's a matter of like a self like evaluation to some extent. I think that, you know, every company that I've ever founded or led in any which way, I would often ask myself that, am I doing the brand service? And I would check in on that with every month from that matter as well. And I think that if the beginning is to really kind of do that self-reflection, it starts with that. That do you have that time? Do you carve out that time? That the things that I'm working on for my brand, for the brand, am I moving the needle? Am I progressing it forward? What are the things that I'm spending my time on day to day? And is that actually driving success towards the brand? And so starting there and building that into your own workflow and your own evaluation metric is going to be really important. Do you do that right now, Corey? Do you like kind of take a step back and like, how am I actually helping Buffa?
Yeah, so I think I can kind of look at it from both perspectives, my own business and beyond. I kind of take that one step further and I go, okay, part of that self-assessment is actually looking ahead and saying, what are my goals? What's my timeline? What do I actually want to achieve here? So what do I want to do in 1 year, 2 years, revenue level or otherwise? And then actually working backwards from that, not looking forward and being like, okay, like, what are we doing here? Hey, I want to be a $5 million company. I would be a $10 million company. I want to be a $10 million company on Amazon. What does that look like? And can I get there while I'm the one running PPC? Is that realistic? Like, and actually road mapping, like reverse road mapping, is kind of a term that we would utilize for it, to say, is that even a feasible thing? Like, if we get to X on the roadmap, when do things start to break down? Because I think if you reverse roadmap your goals to where you are, it actually gives you a pinpoint location of, when it hits this threshold, I can't do this, and this, and I need to then start to make those decisions to delegate. And what I think it does is it gives you some clear visuals, kind of a clear visual representation of where you're heading, where you're essentially going to fail, where you're going to drop off, or start to impede yourself. And then what you can do is say, okay, well, I can hold that. I can hold on to that for 3 months, but if I've held on to it for 9 months, it's way too much. So then you have to actually keep reversing and going, okay, so now I need to build to being able to let this go. And now you have a bit of a roadmap yourself to help you kind of get stepping stone to where you're actually trying to go.
It's an interesting framework, right? Because I think that, like, when even correlating it back into where you're taking it there within the PPC, it's like, how much of, like, if you say that I want to get to this growth, how is your PPC tying to that growth? And you'll realize the conversation you're having with yourself is strategic. It's not a tactical conversation. It's not okay, well, if I adjust this bid today and spend an hour on adjusting all my bids and going into the ads console and doing all that, the amount of time and energy you put into that tactical element towards it, if you find yourself spending a few hours a day on that, that's actually not, you're moving a day over day needle, you're moving a KPI, but what you're actually trying to do towards that end goal, exactly what we talked about, is that you're trying to move strategically through that and drive that growth month over month. And so if you're focused in the weeds, how do you see the forest from the trees? How do you take a look back, right? And I think that's where people kind of get stuck, and people and when you want to self-identify, and if you're a brand owner and trying to figure out where you're spending your time and how you're spending it, it's, do I even have the skills? Did I know PPC before I randomly started it? Did I know these things beforehand? Have I learned? Are there more competitors coming in and my market share is dropping? My BSR is taking, like, all these things are risks and threats. And the more we don't deal with it on a strategic level, on a market level, at a higher level, the tactical is actually going to be more and more irrelevant. Right? It doesn't. You're not moving the needle anymore. You're not actually solving much. You're solving something very small that won't roll up to make most significant change when you're the one thinking about the future of, hey, I want to get this to 10 million at the end of the year. Right. And so is PPC a contributor towards that? Is your tactical elements a contributor to that? Absolutely. But you spending the time on that is going to inhibit your growth, not actually drive it forward. Whether you're the best PPC person or not, it's the delegation, it's the letting it go, it's the giving them a framework and a sandbox to run with and say, this is the kind of things that we look at, how we want to create our strategy, and let them execute it. And that's what being a good brand leader is. That's what being a growing brand leader is. Scaling your brand all comes back to that this is how we look at this. This is how this plays a role in our overarching strategy for driving to that 10 million mark, or that 20 million mark, or that 30 million mark. And then once they understand that, then that partner can execute it for you, and you're holding them accountable to that then. And you can actually focus on that with them as a result of that, more so than what is my bid today? What is my bid in 5 hours? If you're trying to change things on that granular level, which that CEO actually was, right? He's got Amazon Ads Console open up on the top right of his screen all day, and like that's like I'm still shocked by that.
Yeah, so it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild, and this is where, like, as as the chief strategist within my business and kind of building those personal relationships with the partners that we have, I always joke that half of doing Amazon consulting is actually therapy, because I actually serve a lot of times as a checkpoint for people to look in the mirror, because I have to tell people a lot. I don't tell people what they want to hear. I answer the questions they ask, and that's hard as a consultant, because you don't. A lot of times, yes, you get a lot of friendships out of this, but there's a lot of conversations that are uncomfortable as well. But I think uncomfortable conversations, much like therapy, are like what move you forward as a person or as a business. And having those checkpoints with me, I get to see some of the raw conversation of, hey, I'm having a lot of doubt on this, and the other thing. And we start to work through those and what that looks like, and letting go of certain things. And I think that that's a lot of where that trust grows, and where we're able to kind of build a lot of like fantastic partnerships, and just key off of the conversations and the trepidations that they're having already internally, and kind of dial those in with someone, because a lot of people are also solopreneurs. So they're having these conversations with people that maybe don't understand what they're going through. They get on with me, and I'm working through it in a very, very granular way, and they feel seen, and they start to understand, like, wow, actually, okay, there's more options out there.
Yeah. And so I think that it's the way you approach it. Also, you're calming the individual. I think I open up to you about more than I normally would, just by nature of who you are and your personality there. So it makes it really easy to be able to chat with you, and also have that confidence in you, and feel heard as a result, right? Because that's often what we're looking for, and as brand owners and folks in e-commerce, like, these are my concerns, and being able to be vulnerable on that front. And so that, Corey, let's talk about that then. Like, how do you build those like partnerships? Like, one thing is to identify when you need it, how you need it, right? And recognizing that part of it, knowing when you kind of need to let go. But then it's like, okay, well, how do I build the partnership that allows me to have the confidence that letting go was the right thing, that this will drive towards my success? Again, to your point, you take the consultative, let's call it let's call it the friend approach, right? The therapy approach as well there. But what are some of the earmarks or the ways to look at and build these partnerships with brands?
Yeah, so internally, I've had written on, I think, our biggest whiteboard for 5 years at this point, 3 words, and 3 words that we live by, and I think that these continue to serve us. And it says people, projects, profits.
Yeah.
And that is exactly where everything in our company comes from, because that is always my mindset first and foremost.
Yes.
Work with people, work on projects. But if you have that implicit trust, the projects will happen, the projects will flow, and the profits will show up. If you go in reverse order, if you're so worried about money on the way in, you'll be so worried about money on the way out. And it will not work. Because what I have found is, let's look at the last, we'll call it 50 days. You're in Canada, I'm in the US. There's a lot going on there, right? Topical, we're not going to go deep into that, but there's a lot going on there, and there's a lot of reaction that needs to happen. And right now is a time where you need to have implicit trust in the people that you're working with, that they have your best, because with tariffs, with movements, with breakdowns, e-commerce moves super fast, and you're not going to make the same amount of money every single month, because things are going to constantly change, constantly break, new opportunities, all those. And having that trust in the long term, and trusting the people that you're working with, the leadership you're working with, the overall teams that you have as people that, like, hey, this month wasn't it. It wasn't our best month, but I know that you put your best foot forward, and that you have my back, and that you've been just as worried about this as I am, and that we will get it figured out. We will build solutions, and we will get back to where we were heading before, and trending in the right direction in the long term. And that's the way that I look at everything. When people come to me and they want this short term, that's just not even a conversation for me, because I need to have that long term trust with someone, that they have my back, I have their back. We will do the projects along the way, and along the way, hopefully everybody makes money. That's great. That's what we're here for. That's business. But ultimately, I always think that follows good relationships.
Yeah, and it's a strong point, right? Like good work gets more work, right? And like the output of doing a good job is getting paid, right? It's the profit side of that. It's the actually making money. And so I definitely agree with the philosophy there. I think a lot of what you're talking about, and two parts that you mentioned there that was really interesting, was like it's the trust in the expertise that builds the partnership. That it's not that, hey, you know what, there's one good month and then now we had a bad month and we're gonna go somewhere else now. It's that is this person have the right expertise? Do I believe that to be true? If I do believe that to be true, when there is a down month, is this the right person to support me in good and bad days? Right. And those are kind of the questions that you're often solving for, but that as brands that should be asking that, do I trust this person has the expertise? If I do I trust this person to support me in the good and the bad? And will we work together towards that end goal? And that's really just kind of the expectation setting. That's really just the beginning of that partnership, right? Like for a brand to align with you and your philosophy on like the people, projects, profit, that, you know what, that aligns with me. That aligns with how I think about it and how I look at it too, right? And so you're finding that initial setting of like that expectation setting of what you believe to be true on a company and vision level, on an expertise level, and what we need from each other as partners there. And then I think the next part of it goes to, well, how do you know we're doing a good job, right? It's defining those success metrics from the beginning with your partner, right? That this is what I'm looking for. This is what's going to happen. And when we are doing badly, what is too bad that I'm getting concerned, right? But because we always just focus on this is good. I'm going to hold you accountable to here. If we get above this, I'm going to be elated. But there is an element of like, at this, you know what, I'm okay if it goes down, because that is going to happen. But what is so bad that I'm like, okay, Corey, I don't think or even people asking me like, you know, it's not doing well for me. This is when it's bad. And I don't think people ask enough of that question. And brands need to ask that question or be able to answer that for themselves as well, but also communicate that to your partners.
Yeah, and I think that needs to be not just quantitative. I think that's another aspect to it. Like, and that's why I start with people, because that's the qualitative, right? And that's the qualitative that you tend to overlook. When the numbers dip, do you have someone you can look in the eye and dig in to what's going on? And that's the qualitative. Like, are you going to get a response to that email within a day or 2 hours? Like, how into this is your partner? How worried about it are they? I know my team. You're like, if someone doesn't answer an email within the day, send a search party. Like they're missing. Like, and so for us, if that's where you start, it's like, well, when the numbers go up, the numbers go down. you're a little, yes, you're attached to that, but you're a little less attached to it because you're like, okay, the numbers are going to do what they do along the way, but I know they've got my back. And that's where the partnership side. And I kind of think like, I kind of think of it like the restaurant approach sometimes too. Like not every time you go to your favorite restaurant is it the banger of a meal. Like sometimes they have a down day. Sometimes the service isn't right. Sometimes the meal doesn't come out right. They make mistakes. But do they own it? Do they credit you? Do they care? Like, do they show? You've been in the restaurant, you know that. Like, that's where you make your biggest impact is on those days, admitting, hey, we weren't at our best, but we're going to come back super strong next time, and keeping that long-term relationship.
And you nailed it. I think that's the biggest part within restaurants is that the moment someone comes to your door, have you convinced them to come back? Right. And that's going to be the biggest thing that have they, and I don't even think convinced is the right word, is have you earned their return patronage, their repeat patronage, right?
That's it. That's it.
And that's really what it comes down to. And everyone should be earning that, whether it be the e-commerce or the brand side or even the partner side. That are you earning, because it's a two-way street here, right? This isn't well, look, I think this is true, but in the world, but shit rolls downhill. But engaging in a business relationship in a partnership capacity with a brand and a partner, with a brand and technology, brand and an agency, whatever it may be, both players have a choice, right? And that's what it comes down to. That are both parties earning each other's trust, respect, how they work together, giving enough space, right? And making sure that we are leveraging those conversations, leveraging those partnerships, and treating them with the space and also the respect that they deserve. And I know, Corey, you've never hesitated to tell a partner or a brand that we're just not matching up here anymore.
Yeah,
right? And
it's a hard conversation, but it's real.
Yeah, and it's and as a result, the brand loses, right? Like as a result, everyone loses in the process, right? Like the people, the projects, the profits, everything's gone, right? Because we aren't able to treat our partners with the right respect, and we aren't doing it in that way. And so being cognizant and recognizing that there is an element of this that it's a two-way street, and that it's not always everyone's going to take your business for the sake of it. And if they are, it's not the right business to go to. But it's because that's just profits based. Then it's that I found someone that is my trusted partner. I believe them to be my trusted partner, and in turn, I'm going to treat them with the respect of being my trusted partner as well, because that's already expected from my partner. And so what you expect, what I expect, what we all expect, we got to hold ourselves accountable to our own expectations and drive our own success that way. And so, Corey, I know we want to do one last little segment here, and I want to wrap up on this front, but you got parting words here: shedding the brand ego, building partnerships that last, the bridge towards doing that. Any parting words here as we move into the next section?
Yeah. So the next section is going to be super fun, I think. But parting words on this side of things, I would say for if you're a seller out there or business owner or even just a leader in your business, have this conversation with yourself. Take it out on a run, take it out on your bike, or whatever else you do. If you're not a cardio person like me, meditate on it. Have that conversation with yourself of where is my time best served and where's my energy best served, and where am I focusing time and energy that is not actually serving me anymore. I'm just holding on to it too tight. Have that question. Is there anything that I'm the only person that can do this? And if there is, deep dive into that internally and kind of figure out, is that true? And if it's not true, start to figure out ways to kind of break that open and explore opportunities where other people can partner with you. And like I said, row in the same direction, because that is truly the bread and butter of where we see scale with brands just popping up. You have to be able to have great people and great partners in-house or out or both that can row with you and get you where you need to go.
Yeah, it's I'm going to add one thing onto there, and to echo the sentiment. I think the only other piece is, do I believe that I am the most up to date on the knowledge around this expertise or this skill? And if you're not, then that's also something to evaluate and look at. That, do I need someone who is, right? And with marketplaces changing all the time, with macroeconomic trends and kind of things that are happening in various different ways, do I have the right people around me to support my business so that instead of just growing, am I gonna how do I protect against not losing as well, right? Because we all want to play to win. That's fundamentally what it is. We don't wake up to lose; we wake up to win. But that being said, Corey, the last section here, this was something that you and I talked about. Let's do a quick little lightning round. You and I have both kind of prepared a couple questions. Let's do two.
I got to cut down just to two. Okay, all right. I got five good ones, but we're gonna go with two. All right. Are you gonna kick us off?
But I'll throw it to you first. And so, rapid fire questions that neither him or I know the end or know the questions are. And so let's go through it. And let's see where we shake out.
Oh, okay. So we're gonna do. What book has impacted your life the most so far?
Ooh. That's okay. So I literally have the books right here, and I have to look over there. There's two. There's the Simon Sinek Start With Why. It's one that I talk about often because I think that everyone needs to focus on that. Everyone needs to understand their why. Everyone needs to know, and even whether it be from a marketing standpoint or it be from a running your business standpoint or just living day to day. Like, who are we? Why do you do what you do? And starting with why, whether it be in your own life or in your own marketing, in your own communications or how you approach it. And so I will always plug Simon Sinek in the Start With Why. Take a read through it. Watch it. There's a TED Talk. That's probably the most popular one to help kind of guide you through it. But Simon Sinek Start With Why is one. And then the other is more of a philosophical one. But one that kind of gives you questions and drives you a little bit of purpose and helping you understand a bit more about yourself and where you want to go, and through a story perspective there too. But The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, fantastic read. Have you read it?
I've not read either of those, and now they're both immediately on my list.
Yeah, take a look at both of them. I actually think you'll love both of them. But one of the things I've governed myself on with, like, even from The Alchemist as well, is like everything happens in threes, right? That if something bad's going to happen, it's unique, but if it happens again, something else will probably come following that. And so it's like that. There's little parallels and concepts like that allow you to understand or prepare things that just get you to buy into. And I think we all have ours, whether it be from like a family tradition or what my mom always used to say growing up, and no socks with roll, all the way down to something like that. And so Paulo Coelho, The Alchemist, was a really interesting one for me as well. I'm actually going to throw it back to you because now I'm kind of curious. Talk to me about your books. What's your favorite book? What's your most impactful
I am a book aficionado. I've got an entire library behind the thing here going on that we've built. So I'll do one. Sapiens. I actually don't know the author of it off the top of my head. Okay. Sapiens. It's the actual real history of the spreading of humans across the globe and the development of religion, politics, and extension beyond tribalism. And it was very eye-opening to how I approach the world.
Interesting. Okay, I just wrote it down if you couldn't tell.
It's such a good book. It's a book that every single human being, which is all of us, should read at some point to further understand where we came from as people and why we do the things that we do, by understanding a lot of the unbiased history, because it's not written in a way that is based on a certain country or anything like that. It is just the things that we know that were written in. So it's very, very interesting.
That's actually I really like that. It's one I actually had a discussion about this over the weekend. But we believe red is stop and green is go because someone just decided that. And now every single time we see red, we believe stop. Every single time we see green, we believe go. And it just got decided that way. And there's some reason for it way back whenever, but imagine the colors were changed, and that just makes everyone feel uncomfortable. Like green means stop and red means go. Like everyone's like, no, that doesn't make any sense. And so there's definitely some underlying societal things that we've just governed ourselves with along the way. That being said, one of my questions to you was what is actually in a similar vein here, but a quote that changed your life.
Time amongst the trees is never wasted.
Time amongst the trees is never wasted. Tell me more. How did that, tell me what your understanding of that is and then how that changed your life.
So I am an avid runner. For those who don't know me, I am a
Yeah.
many time marathoner. It is definitely my decompression in life. And for me, I definitely struggle with overwork and overstress, and I find that kind of what they say, nature bathing, is something that just detoxes me and makes me feel grounded. So I'm really big on camping. I'm really big on honestly doing what my wife calls lumberjack things in the backyard, and getting out and landscaping, and also just hiking, just being in spaces that open up your mind and allow you to connect with the greater earth. And for me, that quote was an enablement for me to say, like, everyone's so into productivity, right? Productivity hacks, and we gotta be. Productivity doesn't determine your worth. And so
Yeah.
for me, I have a tattoo on my right wrist that has a compass that points directly to the tree of life, and there
Yeah.
behind it is a pathway running into the mountains. And for me, that's life. And so having a quote, and it's actually hanging in my office here to
Yeah.
remind me that you know what, it's productivity doesn't matter. Time amongst the trees
Yeah.
is never wasted. I've never had a bad day under the trees.
Yeah. I actually really like that. It's, there's so much that I even kind of applying to myself here. And, it's like, I do a cottage trip with a few friends. We've gone on for 8 years now. And that's a big part of it is just, we get to the cottage, phone drops for a week. And we're spending time in the trees. We're spending time, on the lake, on the dock, and just kind of letting go, let's call it a little bit from the standpoint of, and from the standpoint of just like everything that kind of holds you down. Like for the first day, I'm always reaching for my phone.
Isn't
And
it
I'm always,
unreal?
it's nuts. And like that phantom vibration, I'm like, that's not real. It's a real thing. Like, oh, my phone rang. It's like, no, it definitely could not have. It's on airplane mode.
Ali, your phone's in the car, brother. It's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it's not even in your pocket, and you're
Yeah,
feeling it on
yeah.
your thigh.
So it's super interesting, but that does coming out of that week is some of the most I call it like kind of like my mind's new year, where I unlock things for myself that I find myself in thoughts that I wouldn't normally have when I'm in the city, let's call it, and so I really like that. Actually, I genuinely appreciate that one.
Fantastic.
um,
Let me hit you with my next one.
yeah, hit me.
I want you to name a person that's impacted your life in a dramatic way and say thank you to them.
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Told you I had 5 good ones.
That's a deep cut here. I gotta think about that.
It's Ladies and gentlemen, it's not often Ali doesn't have an answer to a question, and I've made him pause on both questions so far. So this is an achievement for me.
Yeah, this is you're getting me good here, Corey. Yeah. So I'm gonna reference. There's probably this is gonna go. I think you know me, Corey. I'm pretty open book, and so I'll be a little bit more vulnerable here with this one as well. Um, there's an element of like I won't say who this person is, because that will we reveal a little bit too much.
Sure.
But there's an element of like a big part of even as I grew up and as I've kind of throughout my professional career here, and I got this probably about 4 or 5 years into my agency, was oftentimes things that seem so clear to me aren't clear to everyone else, and for other people they'll have their own clarity and think it'll be clear for them, but won't clear for anyone else. And so, and I get told this more times than not as well that Ellie, like just slow it down, right? Bring it back to me. I haven't caught up to where you are. I haven't caught up to where you are, and give me that context and explain that path to me. And a CEO actually told this to me, and it actually just rang true so well. It was like, it's like, and I used to get frustrated by this. I used to get bothered by it. I used to get so kind of like I'm like, and to be quite frank, Corey, I think this was like probably like 7 years ago now. And I to be quite frankly, I'm like everyone's dumb. Was the path that I went down, right? That I just had to accept that you know what, everyone's just dumb. And it used to frustrate me. Like, how do people not see this? How do they not understand this? Like, it used to really frustrate me. And so one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got was that just because people don't understand certain things doesn't make them dumb, and doesn't make them not smart. Doesn't make that and it actually changed like my whole life from learning that, and how I approached conversations, how I took the time to explain things that, and respecting people and their brains in the way that's unique to them. And as much as, you know, I was doing a bit of that before, and I can be a bit more crass. I'm probably being a bit more crass about my perspectives on people, and simplifying it. But it allowed me to change the way I engage with people and to change my perspective on people's perspectives. And it really unlocked my own growth, my business growth, but really my own mental fortitude and my own mental clarity around that. And so, I was hesitating there because I'm like, I know exactly which one this is going to go back to for me, but it requires a story, and it requires some context.
That's great. That's perfect. You got to meet people where they are too. I think that's kind of the genesis of that, right? Like, meet people where they are. Just because they're not at the same point as you doesn't mean that they can't get there. But they're not there at this moment because you probably thought about something a lot more than they have. And I'm someone who internalizes a lot of things, and I move super fast. My brain moves super fast, and I see everything as it could be, not as it is. So I know that for me, my brother always said, like, Corey, you're an acquired taste. He said that on my wedding toast, and I love that. And I used to be ashamed of that to a degree, and now I'm like, actually, I like that. That means I'm a little different. And sometimes, you know what else is an acquired taste? Coffee. Everyone loves, you know what I mean? It's like the best things are, and I think if you give them the time and they like to learn to enjoy them. So thank you for sharing that. I know that was probably a different question than you were expecting.
No, I love the question. I think this is actually really good. I think that even people watching this or even going through this, it's like, ask these questions to yourself, right? Like, you know, the amount of joy that it's bringing me to be able to communicate it, and even for you, Corey, as well, like us going through these kind of things is actually a good self-reflection, a good self approach towards it too. You want me to give you one more question?
Yeah. I was before we jump to that, I did want to say, like, and if you're a leader in your organization, or you're just watching this in general, this is a great thing to throw out in a Slack channel, and just see what people come back with. And I've got some other questions too, but like, that's what I was thinking of, is like, these are the types of questions when we do our monthly update internally. I ask my whole team, like, hey, tell me something like along these lines, so that everybody can see a little bit of personality and how different we are, even though we all really get along. People will give completely different answers to all of these. And it's really meaningful to moving the conversation and building culture, even in your organization. All right, hit me with the last one.
Yeah, it's actually a really good point. That's a good call out. Okay, hold on. I'm trying to figure out which one I want to ask you.
Gotta pare it down.
So there's so many I want to ask you. Okay, so here, let's do that. If your life's legacy was written not by your intentions, but by your daily habits, what story would it tell?
Ooh, it would be summed up in the quote that is on my website and on my Basecamp, and it would be, drink all the coffee, do all the things. That'll be what people remember me by. Honestly, people remember me. I'd constantly drink coffee and just want to do everything at all times at the highest of levels. And I think for me, the young part of my life would be written in very much black and white. And I hope the second half of my life is written a lot more gray.
Interesting. You and I are going to click into this over a coffee.
Yes, let's do it.
When I speak, oh yeah, no, we're definitely clicking into this. For those that have any questions for Corey and I, we're going to be chatting about this again. For a fact, at Prosper. You're going to be there too, right, Corey?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And so, you got any questions? You ever want to talk about brands, partnerships, how to build good partnerships, anything like that? How to work with your partners and cultivate them? Any life questions and philosophical questions? We obviously got them. We'll cut deep. We'll make you analyze yourself in a deeper lens than you ever have before. Come find us. Free Expo Hall passes at Prosper with this code. Hit us up. Come join us. If you need this after and you can't find it, feel free to hit up either myself or Corey on LinkedIn. Our names are right there. Hit the search bar, pull it up. If you do want to book some time with either of us, you can do so from here at gotrials.com/live. Let us know you want to meet with me or you want to meet with Corey. We'll get those meetings set up there as well. And so once again, we're excited to see everyone at Prosper. It's going to be a big one. I am doing a let's call it a quizathon with a bunch of other folks as well. More details on that on my LinkedIn. Corey, you are a breath of fresh air, a wealth of knowledge, and a wonderful friend. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for being this with me, and more to come.
Thanks for having me. We'll see you in a week or so.
You got it, man. See ya.